Pierre is a fighter, and he's doing it for the people who have been left behind for this government. That's really what inspires him. You can't simultaneously say we pushed people away when we got more votes. That's just factually incorrect. That doesn't work on a mathematical level. I don't know what else to say. I mean, we got more votes, we got a higher percentage, we won more seats. Clearly, we weren't pushing people away. We reached historic highs. That's just a nonsensical statement that doesn't hold up to a second's worth of scrutiny.
That's Conservative MP-elect Andrew Scheer and former leader of the party on this program, defending Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and criticism towards their party over its federal election results. The Conservative caucus is set to meet Tuesday all day here in Ottawa in person, and they sure have a lot to talk about. If Poilievre stays as leader, where does he get a seat and when, since he lost his own riding? And though they substantially did increase their vote share, the results of the election were very different from what was predicted for the party at the start of this year. Let's bring in the front bench to talk about that. Former Liberal BC Premier Christy Clark is here. She's a senior advisor with Bennett Jones. Former federal Conservative cabinet minister and MP Monty Solberg is with us. He's the CEO of New West Public Affairs. And former NDP MP and BC Minister Nathan Cullen is with us. He's now a senior advisor at Strategy Corp. Hi, everybody. It's very nice to see you. Monty, I was just getting some details on caucus, and the first part of it will involve basically a vote on whether or not to use the Reform Act. If they vote in favor of it, that means that they then are able to trigger sort of like an internal leadership review. My sense is that there isn't a whole lot of interest among MPs to do that. I'm wondering what your sense is.
Well, I've, canvassed a number of people, and I don't get a sense that people are anxious to remove Pierre. They probably feel he made some mistakes. He probably owes the caucus a bit of an explanation, but he also did some things that were very good. He's built the party up. He's really, reached out to all kinds of new people and achieved some historic numbers. So he's really got a good case to make as well as to why to stay. But of course, ultimately, he's got to find a seat in order to really be effective as the leader of the opposition.
How do you think the fact that he doesn't have a seat, Christy, complicates the entire conversation about his future as leader of the party? Or does
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One is he looks like a loser for not getting his own seat. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that everybody remembers, because and it will highlight for people. He lost track of what the actual issues were in the election. If the issues were not Justin Trudeau, it was Donald Trump. He did, he lost his own seat. He ended up, I think, kind of with a terrible campaign message. He just couldn't get himself over the top. Even though, as Monty said, he got more votes and did better than most other previous Conservative government leaders before him. So I think it's going to be I think for the moment, the caucus is going to rally, because that's what they need to do in the face of, this what I'm sure is a devastating loss for most Conservatives. On the other hand, though, I think it's just, it's only a couple of years probably until the Conservatives or the NDP decide that they want to force an election. And in that case, you will start to see the knives come out for Pierre Poilievre in a very, very big way. Jason Kenney, Premier Ford, lots of people out there who are very competent, very able, proven winners who would probably be interested in having that job. And I don't think anybody is going to say, you know what, you lost the last election, but you can win the next one, when there are lots of ambitious people out there who think that they can do a better job.
What do you think his message to caucus, what would you anticipate from his message to caucus, Nathan, on Tuesday? Because there's this sort of interesting thing to reconcile, which is he did lose his seat. We haven't heard from him since that outcome. We heard from him, obviously, on election night. But at the same time, you didn't win the election, but you've got the biggest share of the popular vote that you've had literally since the 80s when Brian Mulroney was winning these massive Conservative governments. Like, how do you square those things for caucus or for Canadians?
Well, how does so much winning look like losing? Right? All of those things you said are true. What Monty said was absolutely correct, that the party improved, but it's against what do you measure success by. And at Christmas, success was government or bust, right? It's kind of like a team in the playoffs that almost makes it. And then the next run, this time I'm in Toronto right now, Vashi, so excuse me if I'm going to use any Leaf metaphors right now. But the idea is that the goal was government. That goal was not achieved. So, and the seat loss, like we all know now, on election night, we wondered, why is Pierre talking so early in the night? He suddenly is out on stage, he's doing his speech, and we're together. and they knew they were losing his seat and didn't want that result to be in front of everyone and then have to make that speech to the nation. What does he need to say to caucus? I don't know. I get the sense in talking to some Conservative MPs that the loyalty is still high. There aren't a lot of quote unquote star candidates that Mr. Poilievre recruited in the last election. That's actually a benefit right now. So you don't have all these bruised egos that were getting ready for their various cabinet positions and are now ticked off. The people Christy mentioned, they're waiting in the wings, but they're not out chirping. They're not out in public. Well, not with a few exceptions, taking on Pierre right now. I don't think they're clamoring for his job. So I think he's probably fine with caucus. Give it a few months, and if the polling's off, if they're down significantly, that's when things start to get a little bit more rumbly as to the question of, is he the right guy for next? He was great at opposition. Then he applied and auditioned for the prime minister job and didn't really pivot into that feeling for a lot of Canadians that this guy could handle the top job. He was a good attack dog, but is he a good leader in terms of the country's desires for what's next? No, apparently not.
I know, Monty, it's just been a few days. And obviously where you are in Alberta, the support for the Conservatives was very high. And again, a record high for them since the 80s. But to Nathan's point, it's very far from where things were projected, which was over 200 seats for the Conservatives just at the beginning of January. When you think about the results, why do you think they ultimately fell short?
Well, there are a few reasons. On the one hand, I think Pierre had a message that did resonate with a chunk of the population. There were clearly two different sort of sets of people or sets of concerns that drove the election outcome. One was affordability, housing, this kind of thing. The other was the narrative around the need to defend Canada against Donald Trump. And in that instance, we didn't pivot fast enough. We didn't make a strong enough case that we could do that. And it fell in the minds of many Canadians to Mark Carney to be that person. So I think we need to bear that in mind going into a new government. I think there's going to be a period of time where the expectation is that parties work together as much as possible to strengthen Canada so that it can withstand the tariff threat and any threats of annexation from Donald Trump. That may mean doing some things that we don't normally see in Parliament, like trying to work together on pieces of legislation or on initiatives. And I think, Canada's expecting some happy warriors right now on all sides. So it may be a different thing that we haven't seen in a very long time in Canada. And I would encourage Pierre Poilievre and my Conservative colleagues to keep that in mind because I think it will be important at some point down the road when we're asked whether or not we contributed to the defense of Canada in the way that we should have.
Christy, you've sat for a long time in the legislature. You know better than, and all three of you would know better than me. Do you think that this moment will lead to something like that, even though it may be against natural instincts in a political arena?
Well, I think it should. I mean, I've won some and I've lost some. Both the same number, by the way, over the years. These are very difficult times for the leader. I have to say my heart goes out to him in some ways. But I do think, Poilievre has not shown the ability to really kind of soften up and take a different tack. This election may be an important learning moment for him, and I hope he takes it because you're right, Vashi, that is exactly what needs to happen, what Monty Solberg talked about. We need to find some space to try and come together over the most important issues. I'm not naive. I don't think they're not all going to still be fighting and jostling, but the really key things, we need to be united as a country. And a lot of eyes are going to be on Pierre Poilievre to see if he can do that. If he can, I mean, who knows? He might survive to fight another day. I think if he fails to do that, it'll be terrible for Canada. And I think it will probably be his death warrant as leader.
Well, Carney needs to do it too. I would just say that. Yeah. I mean, Carney needs to reach out to Conservatives, certainly in Western Canada. I know we're getting to that, Vashi. Sorry to get ahead of it.
That's our whole next segment, I promise.
Yeah, but it really is critical that he shows that good faith that we didn't see from the Trudeau government on resource development and that sort of thing, because it can't be a one-way street.
Nathan, sorry, you got to jump in too.
My question, and Monty's not wrong. Mr. Carney is different than Mr. Trudeau. He's not, as he told us 4,500 times in the election, he's not a politician. The House itself, the way Parliament has been conducting itself over the last few years, particularly as it ramped up towards the election, was just unworkable. Who's to blame for it? Well, there's lots of blame to go around. Ironically, not so much towards the NDP, who were trying to get things done, but then suffered in the election for maybe that reason or other reasons. I just don't know if Pierre's got the gear, right? Does he have that phase or ability to be graceful in defeat and magnanimous and understand this larger question that you've raised and that your other guests have spoken to, that we're facing this crisis right now, bickering and sniping. It just got so awful, Vashi. You saw it. It was deeply personal, non-functional. This is not the time for that. Does Pierre have that ability to rise to what's being called on upon all members of Parliament right now? We'll see. I guess I'm a little skeptical because I've known him a long time, and he's really good at the attack. Let's see if he's good at this other thing, and that might stand him in good stead and might keep him in his job right now if he wants to go for the top job in an election from now.
Let me just follow up very quickly with just a 30-second question, and maybe, Monty, you can answer this. Do you think there's a possibility of caucus pressuring him for a move in that way? Because I interviewed a couple of MPs, for example, this week on my radio program, who actually brought that up proactively, the idea that on an issue-by-issue basis, for example, on energy, if that comes up, like, that they would need to project a different image to Canadians in this moment. Like, can MPs lead him there?
Well, first of all, nobody is ready for the job of Prime Minister. You have to grow into it. It demands things of you that you don't expect before you get that job. So to be successful, you have to grow and you have to find different gears. When it comes to MPs, I think the MPs are equal partners in the success of the Conservative Party of Canada. And they have a right to demand from their leader that he or she grows in a particular way to ensure that they win elections and command the confidence of Canadians. So I think it's only right for MPs to call out their leaders, preferably behind closed doors, so they can have a fulsome discussion, not in front of the national media like we often do. But, really that is something that tells me about whether or not a leader has the humility to really deserve to be the leader of the party.
That's
Monty,
the word right there.
Monty, I want you to get on the phone
humility?
to Danielle Smith right now.
Well, we're gonna talk about that in the next segment. That's a big part of what we're gonna talk about.